everyone, this is Kendra Morgan with Cards by Kendra. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm excited to share the first video in my Halloween card series that I'll be creating between now and Halloween. For this card, I'm featuring the brand new stamp set Trick or Treat by Simon Hurley Create that was just released. I'm going to start with the background. I'm using Simon Hurley's stark white cardstock and distress oxide inks in some Halloween colors. I have to give a shout out to my friend Sierra with Sierra T Designs for coming up with this brilliant idea on storing these domed foam pads from scrapbook.com. She has the files you can print out, laminate, and place Velcro stickers on them to hold the foam circles. I'll be posting the link to her website in the description box below in case you're interested, along with all the other supplies I'm using for this card. The domes are just a little bit too tall to store underneath the distress ink containers, so I just thought that this was a perfect way to keep them organized. I haven't quite mastered the art of ink blending yet, but I've found that these applicators work the best for me, and I think distress oxide inks blend so much better than regular distress ink. One tip that I learned from one of Simon Hurley's videos is to make sure that the foam circles are placed directly in the center of the applicator. If it's off even just a little bit, it can cause smudges. So I started with carved pumpkin, and then I added ripe persimmon. If you've ever have two colors that won't blend together well, like the orange colors and the purple, you can always add black soot in between them, which is exactly what I'm doing. I then added dusty Concord. I just keep going over these colors until I get a nice blend. Of course, I've sped up the video on this part to save time. So this is the first time I've ever bought digital cut files with a stamp set before. I read on the Stamping with Simon Hurley Create Facebook group to cut the images out before stamping and to save the negative to place it in a stamping platform so you can mass produce. Well, I can tell you I learned several things during this process. I used my brother's Scan-N-Cut to cut out all of the die cuts for all of the stamps, and afterwards I realized that the negative sheet would not fit in my MISTI. I had to trim it down, but then it still wouldn't fit, so I had to cut off part of the bottom. Next, it was like putting a puzzle together. I decided to spare you of this tedious step, so I omitted the footage of me placing all the pieces inside the negative. But since my stamp set is brand new, I'm rubbing my fingers across all the stamps to make them less sticky. You can also take a sand eraser and lightly rub it across the stamp set as well. I will go ahead and tell you that what I'm doing here, placing all of the stamps on top of the die cuts, was a complete waste of time. The magnet on the MISTI is designed to hold your cardstock in place, but if you have all these loose pieces, it doesn't do a lot of good because they'll shift when you move the top plate. Several of the die cuts stuck to the stamps, so I just decided to stamp just a few of the stamps at a time. I'm inking up the stamps with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, which is Copic marker friendly, and that's what I plan on using to color my images. I like to press down on the top plate with my microfiber towel just to make sure I get a good impression. There were a couple of places on a few stamps that needed more ink, so I carefully stamped them again after removing the ones that turned out good on the first try. So at this point, I wasn't sure which stamp I was going to use. I had set aside my background to dry, and I accidentally placed the sticky part of the cellophane that came with the stamps came in on top of it. So it removed some of the ink and put a mark on it. So I was kind of sad about that. But in my attempt to cover it up, I chose the widest stamp, which was the little girl dressed up as a fairy. Since her wand has a star on it, I decided to use the Stargazer stencil, also by Simon Hurley. So I've masked off the bottom part of the background with painter's tape, which is not a good idea, and you'll see why in just a minute. And I'm also using painter's tape to attach the stencil as well. So now I'm using Nouveau Glimmer Paste in Amethyst Purple color, and I'm applying it across the top of the stencil with a palette knife. This is my first time using Glimmer Paste, so I was crossing my fingers that it would turn out and not ruin my background. It turned out really pretty when I removed the stencil, but when I removed the painter's tape, however, different story. So as you can see here, parts of the background stuck to the tape. I was like, oh no, but then I remembered I hadn't trimmed the background down yet, and I figured I could come up with another plan to cover it up later on. So I set the background aside to dry, And now I'm on to coloring the images. I started off coloring her hair with Y21 and YR21, and then I colored her face and skin with E00 and E50. Next, I colored her dress with R85 and R83, starting with the darker shade and then blending in the lighter pink. I colored the wings with the purple colors V15 and V17, and then I added that same lighter pink shade that I used on her dress. Oh, and I used Y02 for her little star on her wand, and I used the same purple colors for her bag. And now I'm coloring the pumpkin with YR07 and YR04, and I used YG17 for the stem. I wanted the pumpkin to have a face, so I stamped one on using my small acrylic block and a smaller version of the Memento black ink. And I also colored the sentiment with that same orange color that I used for the pumpkin. And now I'm trimming down the background to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. So for my card base, I'm using a piece of Simon Hurley stark white cardstock that I've cut down the middle vertically, and I scored it at 5.5 inches to make it a top folding card. There were still a few imperfections on the background that I wanted to cover up. The top left corner had a part where the glimmer paste got smeared, so I found this orange and black ribbon that would cover it up perfectly. I can't remember where I bought it though. But I'm using my scrapbook.com adhesive runner along the back of the ribbon to adhere it to the background before placing it on the black mat that I had previously cut down to 4 and 5 1/4 inches. Now I typically use liquid glue to adhere all of my parts down to my card because it gives me some wiggle room in case I place it exactly, or don't place it exactly in the middle. So I decided to switch to Nuvo Deluxe adhesive before gluing that down to the card base. Now I'm gluing all of the die cuts down using my 3D foam squares. I'm trying to place this fairy where it will cover up another star that got smudged, and I also wanted it to overlap the ribbon just a little bit. I'm using a piece of black cardstock to help me line up the pumpkin and the little girl's feet, and I didn't like how they were floating in space, so I tried to color a shadow underneath, but it didn't really show up. So I fixed this with a different piece of cardstock here in just a moment. But I've glued every single die cut down with the 3D foam squares to give it some dimension. So rather than having them float in air, I found a piece of scrap green cardboard that I had trimmed down to fit just below where the foam squares were attached, right below her feet, and I attached this to the bottom of the card. So this finishes up my card for today. I hope you like it. I think this card turned out pretty cute myself. I'm excited about sharing some more cards with the other images in this stamp set on my channel soon, so be sure to subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber, and sign up for those notifications so you don't miss out. I appreciate all of you for taking the time out of your day to watch my video, and I thank you so much for supporting my channel. Let me know what you think of my video in the comments below, and click that like button if you enjoyed it. You can also follow me on Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook at Cards by Kendra. Thank you and have a wonderful day.